hopefully, this evening, we're going to finish up chapter 44. I believe we left off at verse 17 before. And as you'll recall, the 11 brothers at this point are all standing before Joseph, wondering what happened. And of course, Judah, you'll recall, has volunteered to take the punishment, and Joseph, being the kind of sneaky little individual that apparently he has become at this point, is still kind of dragging this out and told him, nope, I wouldn't do that. Only the one that's guilty is going to be punished. Everybody else can go home. And of course they know, well, that's Benjamin that his divining cup was found with. So that's kind of where we find it at this point. Then verse 18 says, Then Judah approached him and said, O my Lord, may your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears. And do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh. So, interesting at this point that we have Judah groveling before Joseph. Of course, at this point, he still doesn't even realize this is Joseph. I can only imagine that Joseph consistently kept them at least a few feet away and never dared to appear before them without all the, accoutrements and probably that makeup that Egyptians were known for putting on their eyes and what have you. Because surely at some point, one of them would have taken a good hard look at him and realized, you look awfully familiar. But we don't see that. And so we have Judah groveling, and says, verse 19 says, My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have an old father and a little child of his old age. Now his brother is dead, so he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. Now, notice at this point, Judah, really, the rest of them are standing there, although I'm sure they're nodding their heads in agreement, is actually at this point coming to Jacob's defense. Even though they know that Jacob has played favorites all these years, notice Judah is making no effort to just leave Benjamin to twist in the wind. And I think that's kind of what Joseph was waiting for, is would they do to Benjamin what they did to him?
And to Simeon.
Well, yeah. But with Simeon,
well, I guess they did come back. It
was kind of Joseph's decision to put Simeon in jail. Could have been any of them, but Joseph chose Simeon.
They didn't do that to Simeon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they did finally come back. We don't know how many months that Simeon probably was in the prison, or how well he may have been treated at that point. But Judah is actually at this point coming to Jacob's defense rather than say, well, you know what, that sounds pretty fair to us. You keep Benjamin, do with him whatever you want to. The rest of us are out of here. I think that was the issue that Joseph was waiting to see, is would they leave Benjamin to suffer the consequences and sell him into slavery, essentially. Verse 21 says, Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. But we said to my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Now, notice in verse 22 how they are still referring to Benjamin. Yeah.
And even in 20, he calls him a little child of his old age.
Yeah, a little child of his old age. But again, we know just simply from the time that has gone by, I mean, Joseph's been there in Egypt by this point. It was 20 years when he, was appointed by Pharaoh as prime minister. We've got 7 years of, a
Abundance.
good harvest, and this is probably more than likely at least the second year into the famine. So we're looking at about 30 years that it's been. So that tells us that even if Benjamin had been born just before they sold Joseph, he'd be 30 years old. And we know that Benjamin probably was more than likely at least a toddler or probably a young child at that time. So we're looking at somebody who's, 31, 32, possibly 33 years old. But they still keep referring to him as, well, he's our dad's little baby.
Don't you think it's possible that God decided to make it so that the brothers didn't recognize him?
That's entirely another possibility, is that God somehow prevented them from recognizing him. That's one thing that we're not told about that we can speculate on, but it is a possibility. All right, verse 23. You said to your servants, however, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. Thus it came about when we went up to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord, and our father said, go back, buy us a little food. We said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our younger brother is with us. Now, they're just going through all of this rehashing of what Joseph already knows. They know that Joseph knows this. So what's the point? Why is Judah going through all of this, telling Joseph what they know Joseph already knows?
Want to soften him up, maybe?
Yeah, soften him up, buy a little time, try to let him know that, hey, if you keep Benjamin, it's really going to cause us a hard time. We came down here in good faith with our little brother, and we just can't leave him. I mean, Judah's basically, as you just said, I think he's trying to soften up, the prime minister here and hoping that Joseph will either relent and keep Judah if necessary, or let them go.
He's giving them the long, drawn-out sob story.
Long drawn out sob story. But don't overlook also the theological foundation that's being laid in all of this, is that Judah is the one offering to take the punishment for all the rest of them.
Propitiation.
Yep. Well, no, not, well, yeah, propitiation to some degree. Does everybody know what the term propitiation means? What's that?
1 John chapter 10 and Romans, I believe.
Well, yeah, but you know what?
Jesus is taking your sin on him.
That's expiation.
Expiation. Okay.
Expiate. There's two big fancy words that you'll see not only biblically, but you'll come across them quite frequently in various commentaries. But expiation is the fancy theological word that means Jesus died in our place. Propitiation is the word that means he took the anger, the wrath of God on himself. And at this point, Judah is essentially arguing to be the expiation for Benjamin. I will take, his punishment. I'll stand in his place. If you'll just let all the rest of them go, I'll stay. And of course, even though Judah himself is by no means innocent, we see here the model for what Judah's descendant, none other than Jesus himself, will do for everybody else. Now, from Joseph's perspective, why is it so important that Judah is the one that steps forward and says, I'll do it, I'll take the punishment, let everybody else go? Why is that important? And now, not to say that Joseph necessarily was holding out and waiting to hear this, but this would be a major issue for Joseph. Does anybody remember?
Is that just we said bloodline?
No,
No.
a little more practical than that.
Okay.
Was he the
Gotcha.
one that targeted Joseph
Yeah,
first?
It was Judah's idea to sell him into slavery to begin with. Reuben was the one that was going to try to step forward and go, "Oh, I'll save him," and didn't work out that way. You recall Reuben went off to town, probably got some food, whatever, came back still expecting him to find him sitting in the pit, and figured, "Oh, I'll come back and I'll rescue him." He comes back, looks in the pit, no Joseph, and then chases his brothers down. It's like, "What'd you do with him?" "We sold him into slavery." Whose idea was that? Judah's. So Joseph, knowing Judah's the one that came up with the idea to sell me to, and send me down to Egypt, for Judah to step up to the plate and come to the defense of his brother Benjamin, this is a major issue for Joseph, which tells us one of the reasons why, not in this chapter, but if we get on into chapter 43, we'll see that Joseph has to slip out to the back room again because he's about to, to lose control of himself and starts just can't handle the emotions of all of this, because Joseph, I think, is seeing at this point, it's been 30 plus years, but my brothers have changed. All right. Let's see. Verse 27. And your servant my father said to us, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn in pieces, and I've not seen him since." Now, this particular statement there, as Judah is quoting what Jacob said and believed about Joseph. What's peculiar about this particular part? Give you a hint. This would be the first time ever that Joseph has heard what they probably told his dad as to what happened to him. Because by the time, Jacob was told and was handed the coat with blood all over it, Joseph was long gone. He was on his way to Egypt. So more than likely, this is the first time Joseph is hearing, "My dad thinks I'm dead, and he thinks an animal got me." Verse 29, "And if you take this one," meaning Benjamin, "if you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you'll bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father," by the way, they consistently refer to Jacob as your servant. They are being very
Aqueous.
yeah, they're being submissive to Joseph, and this is basically a cultural way of referring to someone in the third person when speaking to royalty or someone in a position of authority, by referring to them as your servant. It said, "When I came to your servant my father, and the lad is, or when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will come about when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. Thus your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow." Now, they would not know that this would be of interest to Joseph, but they're definitely laying it on, hoping that from their perspective, this prime minister will feel sorry for us and let Benjamin go. But it really puzzles me that through all of this interaction, they keep referring to this grown man as the lad and the child. And surely by this point, Joseph has seen up close Benjamin and knows Benjamin's a grown man. But now, let me throw one thing else out at you. You'll recall in the previous chapter when they were eating dinner together, because of Egyptian custom, Joseph had to sit at a separate table. But it says that he consistently gave Benjamin overwhelming portions from his own plate. At one point, you'll recall when they were standing before him, he says, "Is this your younger brother? Well, bring him up here." Why wasn't Joseph concerned about Benjamin getting a good look at him?
Because he didn't know him. He was
Yeah.
little when he left.
Benjamin was just a little kid when Joseph was left. He wasn't worried about Benjamin recognizing him. And in fact, it would probably take divine intervention for Benjamin to be able to recognize him at this point.
There were no seers portraits done of all the children.
No family portraits back then. All right, verse 32. For your servant became surety. Now, I'm not sure what particular word whatever version of the Bible you're reading from, but anybody know what the term surety means?
Guaranteed.
Collateral.
Positive.
Yeah, guarantee, collateral. Your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Also, what else did Judah offer besides himself?
His 2 sons.
His 2 sons. Now, what was peculiar about those 2 sons? Remember, those weren't his. Judah had 3 sons originally, remember? 2 of them died. One of them, we know that he did not allow Tamar to marry the 3rd son. And after that, we're just not told what happened to the 3rd son. But Tamar got pregnant with what? Yeah, she had twins. Now, the fact that Judah is here offering up his 2 sons, clearly he's talking about Tamar's twins. We don't know what happened to Judah's 3rd son, which kind of tells us that maybe, since there's no mention of him, if his first 2 boys died from mysterious circumstances, could be some congenital disease or whatever, you think there's a possibility maybe that 3rd son did too? And again, that's speculation, but all my point is here is that Judah consistently in this story refers to his 2 sons, not 3 of them. So that kind of tells us we're talking about Tamar's twin boys. All right, verse 33. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad, a slave to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest I see the evil that would overtake my father? Now, clearly at this point, Judah is putting his life literally on the line here. And he is willing to do whatever is necessary, slavery, execution, you name it. He's pretty much putting his life literally on the line to save his brothers. And that, I think, is what Joseph has been waiting for them to come to Benjamin. Excuse me, my voice starting to give out here. They're coming to Benjamin's defense, and for Judah, who he knows is the one that was responsible for him being sold into slavery, to now own up to it. He's at one point, said, hey, God's done caught up with us. This is all happening to us because of what we did. So you're seeing repentance on their part. You're seeing now Judah, instead of hanging his brother out to dry, is coming to the brother's defense. all of these are the things that Joseph wants to see happen. I've often wondered what would be the case if they basically said, you know what, keep the kid. We're all going home.
You know, what would you done?
What's that?
Yeah, what would Joseph have done? Yeah.
I'm sure after they left, Joseph probably, and again, this is just my guess.
Yeah.
I'm sure Joseph would have revealed himself to his brother Benjamin, and Benjamin would have lived high on the hog the rest of his life.
Yep.
But I'd be willing to bet if any of the rest of the brothers showed their face in Egypt again,
They go to jail.
they'd at the very least be going to jail.
Me and my brother will be just fine.
Yeah.
See you guys. Yeah. That's how it would have gone
Be
down.
real.
All right. Well, it's about 10 till, and this is a good stopping spot, but I will tell you this much. As we get into chapter 45 on Wednesday, there is no, trip back to Canaan, under mysterious circumstances. Beginning in chapter 45, Joseph has basically drugged this out as long as it's going to. And in chapter 45, we will see that Joseph tells them who he is. They do go back to Canaan, but they all go back with smiles on their face and say, Dad, guess what?
You're not dead yet.
Yeah, he's not dead yet. All right, questions this evening? All right. Well,